Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. This is a horror movie show. We talk about horror movies. I'm Peter, that is Timothy.
Hello?
And this is going to be one of our special episodes. Obviously it's October. It's the month of Halloween. We are celebrating by so many extra episodes. Everything's orange and celebration. It's a fun time. And today we're doing another slasher movie double feature. We did one of these last month and we're doing one again. Because I had good fun and I feel like they go well in pairs. So on this episode, we are going to be talking about Pieces from 1982, and also from 1982, we're also going to be talking about The Dorm That Dripped Blood, also known as Death Dorm. So,
I think also known as pranks.
also known as pranks. Yeah, I don't know what it is about horror movies from the early 80s, but there's a lot of them that have like 3 or 4 alternate titles, and I'm not quite sure why. I think it's because they had different titles in Europe, and then they had like video titles, but then they had theater titles and all sorts.
It was a time of indecision. The country is going through a lot of changes. Just couldn't make up our minds.
Yeah. Although nothing is worse than the travesty that is Zombie and Zombie 3, but no Zombie 2 in the US. Absolute travesty.
I just watched Zombie the other day, and of course we're not going to talk about it today, but we should talk about it at some point.
Oh yes, we'll work through all those movies at some point. We'll have a zombie theme month or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so slasher movies, and we're going to start with Pieces,
Yes.
which out of the two of these is the one that I hadn't seen before. This was a complete new watch to me, and full spoilers for the movies, by the way, as we go through them. And this is about someone who is trying to piece together a woman out of parts because when he was a child, he had a fondness for jigsaws. And the movie starts with a flashback to 1942, and the kids
In Boston.
in Boston, yes, and he's doing his jigsaw. By the way, small tidbit here. I got this movie to watch like a week or two ago. And I just checked it, I had a quick look at it before I watched it before this show. And so I seen the first minute, just to see what it was like. And literally the next day, the next episode of Scream Queens had them going to the movies and they were watching. And I recognised what the movie was because it was that opening minute again that we're watching.
That's fantastic.
Just sometimes the universe aligns in that way. But yeah, so the kid's doing his jigsaw puzzle, but his mother's appalled because it's a naked woman who's on the
Very
puzzle.
saucy puzzle. I didn't even know they made pornographic puzzles.
Well, Tim, there was this time before we had the internet, and now it's like if it's not like 1080p and surround sound porn, we're not happy. But there was a time when you had to make do with jigsaw puzzles because that's all there was. That and magazines. So
It's like so much work too. It's just like you just like working so hard, but like, oh, I can't wait to look at this lady as soon as I figure out how.
I mean, obviously as a kid, so this wasn't quite the same way. But if you're an adult and you typically use porn when you're masturbating. I just wonder, like, do you start masturbating when you start the jigsaw puzzle, and you try and keep going until you finish?
It depends probably on how much you can get off on. Like if you can look at one piece and just be like, I'm good, just like see like a little like thigh or something.
Well, if you find a piece that's got a nipple on it, that's you.
Yeah. Oh,
You're
that's
done.
golden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the dream. But yeah, the mother's appalled. She's like disturbed because like this filth in my house. She starts ransacking the room for more stuff. She sends him away, and he comes back with is it an axe or a hatchet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like as axe or whatever.
Yeah, and he kills her in bloody violent fashion. And when the cops show up, they of course just believe that it wasn't him because he's a kid.
Yeah.
So.
And he's like crying in the closet, and they come over to him. Now, I think it's very important to right off the bat kind of mention one of the things that I really enjoy and find maybe the most charming in this movie, which is the dubbing, of course.
The dubbing, yeah, it's worth mentioning that this is a movie that was primarily an Italian film. I think there was some Spanish. Like on IMDb, it lists like several countries as the production. It says Spain, USA, Puerto Rico, and Italy. So it's one of these movies that was mostly European, where but for some reason, up until like mid late 80s, films made in Italy did not care about sinking dialogue. They just didn't care about it. So when they filmed movies, and you see this a lot if you watch like Argento films and other, Giallo movies, where different actors would just speak their own language. They wouldn't even care. You'd have scenes where one character was obviously speaking English originally, but the other character's speaking something completely different, but they've dubbed over it in English. And even the English-speaking characters feel oddly dubbed sometimes because they're obviously different voices or, whatever. And it's got that feeling to it. It's one of those movies.
And I think it's it really in this case kind of, at least for me, lends to my enjoyment of it, because it just, I don't know, it's something about that the kind of atmosphere of this kind of movie. There's already, it's kind of cheesy, a little bit ridiculous, and the dubbing just kind of adds to it. And it also just makes me laugh too, because again, it's set in Boston, and I think maybe the Boston accent wasn't as big a thing like back then, but I feel like it's pretty prevalent now, and you kind of think of Boston people as usually sounding like a little gruffer, macho, more macho-y.
That's true.
But
I would at least argue that the people working and the students at the university, typically, people travel into university. It's not local
That's
people.
True, yeah.
So
yeah.
I could at least buy, other than the cops maybe, I could see them all, being from elsewhere. So
Yeah.
I'll give them that. So we cut to present day of 1982, and we're set at a college, and of course there's murders happening. We see like the mysterious black gloves in a hand, like looking at the jigsaw puzzle and looking at a picture of the mother. So it's obviously this kid's grown up and he's the killer. But who is this kid now? That's the question.
What I love about this second scene is, and I can't really think of maybe any other movie that does it, but they instantly go from like one kill to the other. Like, it starts off with the opening flashback kill of his mom, and then you'd think like, all right, now we're probably gonna get a little story and stuff, but like next scene, like immediately another kill.
Yeah, and of course the weapon of choice for this killer is not always, but typically chainsaw.
Yes, one of the best weapons.
And there's chainsawing of limbs, there's chainsawing through abdomens, there's chainsawing in a variety of ways, and they're all glorious. The kills are actually really, really nice for the most part, and really bloody, splatter everywhere. Really enjoyed that element in the movie. But another element, I mean, you mentioned the dubbing. Some of the dialogue in this is like, there's so much like quote-worthy dialogue that there's no way I've forgotten most of it because there was so much of it, but one of the first set of not teenagers but college students you see, they're talking about like how great it is to have sex on a waterbed, and it sounds like such an alien conversation. Have you ever got laid in a waterbed? Getting laid in a waterbed while it's high at the same time is the most magical thing ever. Like, Jesus Christ, who wrote this dialogue?
That's actually a really good point, because it is hard to remember a lot of it, but it's because there is so much of it. Like, if it's like a regular movie for the most part, and then there's one or two crazy lines, they stick out and then you kind of remember. But this is like the whole movie is just like, it sounds like something more like again, because it's like a European movie, but it sounds like something, the kind of talking you would expect, like a sophisticated, maybe European group of people, I don't know, watching.
Maybe. I feel like whoever wrote the English dialogue was not like a native English speaker. Like, it was someone who'd learned English as a second or third language, and they're the ones who wrote this dialogue.
Sure.
But there was other lines, like the college professor who's kind of a suspect for a while. Like at one point he's talking to the undercover cop, and he is like, "Oh, I'm used to bodies, dead ones. That is." Yeah, that's not creepy and intimidating.
Yeah, that's always a smart thing to say to a cop that's investigating homicide.
Yeah, always. Yeah, actually, I love the lead detective as well. He's this like typical gruff 80s like movie detective who's always got a cigar, always, for no reason, and it's just But yeah, so the gist of the movie is that people obviously start dying, but body parts keep being missing. Like, the killer's taking, maybe legs from one, abdomen from another, feet from one person, so on. And so the body parts are always left in pieces, but there's always one part missing. And after a couple of murders, the police put one of their detectives, a woman named Riggs, funnily enough, if you're a Lethal Weapon fan, that'll mean something to you. That said, I'm not suggesting it was named after that. This was made years before Lethal Weapon happened. But when I hear Riggs, I think of Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
And she's going to go undercover as a tennis coach because, despite being a detective, she happens to be an ex-tennis player.
This is like one of the things that like there's a couple of like really goofy elements of the movie where like I feel like if you take them out, you could actually have like a more conventional, serious like slasher movie. But then you have stuff like this where it's just like a world famous tennis star who's like also a detective going undercover. It's like what?
Not to mention one of the friends of the first victims, Kendall, he becomes like a main character and he's like the liaison for her and he shows her around. And not only is there kind of hints of a romance between them, even though she's meant to be like at least 10 years older, probably more than that. The other detectives basically let him help with the case, and at one point a detective that he's like doing research with actually says the line, "Oh, you're practically one of us now anyway," and lets him come to the call for the crime scene or whatever. And I'm like, no, cops don't do that.
Yeah, it is like a nice little what would you say, like a break or something from like most movies where it's like usually the cops are kind of like the roadblock that like is keeping the person away. Like, no, like, you know, you can't see this person or you can't go in there. Like these cops, they're totally cool with like.
This is more like, yeah, come in, touch the evidence, have a little fiddle with it. You know?
Well, we don't know what we're doing. Could you help us out?
Except for that one scene, of course, where the lead detective gets the professor guy, who's again familiar with dead bodies. He asks him, "Could these cuts be made with that chainsaw that's sitting there?" And he goes up and he sort of looks at things and he goes to touch the chainsaw. He's like, "No, don't touch it. You might contaminate the evidence."
Like they must have just had like a meeting with their supervisor like earlier that day. Like, by the way, guys, you really gotta stop letting people
touch the evidence. So good. There's a lot of nudity in the movie. There's a lot of the obligatory, you know, topless females, even some full frontal females at some point. There's also, and it's funny, like this is going to sound like a really weird complaint, and I think it's just because we're so used to female nudity, right? Where even though most, like 90%, maybe 99% of like female nudity in movies is unjustified, it's unneeded, and it's just there for, you know, titillation, if you will. But there's a bit of like full frontal male nudity in this that not only does it feel unneeded, it comes out of nowhere. Like it's just a guy like this Kendall, it's the main guy. He gets out of bed to like look out the window. And he just happens to be naked, and the camera's just this wide shot, and he gets up, and his thing's just flopping around, like the entire, like, you know, 15-second scene, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I was just like, why was he naked? Like, why did he need to be, like, I mean, it's not that uncommon to have boxers on when you're in bed, like, why did he have to be naked? Like, I don't, now, one could argue it's so that we appreciate his penis, so that later on in the movie, we feel sympathy for it. But it was just at the time I'm like, why was he naked? Like, don't get me wrong, I think that all the time with female nudity, but like at least with female nudity it tends to be only topless. Whereas this was really like, here's a penis in your face for little to no reason.
Well, I will say that I'm actually
oh god, you're gonna justify it.
well, no, just I'm a pretty big component of sleeping naked. I actually started doing it recently when I moved out here because it gets really hot and we don't have air conditioning. But Boston I don't think would be as hot that it would be necessary.
Doesn't Boston have really snowy winters?
Yeah, the winters are horrible. I'm originally from the East Coast, in case anyone's wondering, which they're not. But it can get pretty bad in Rhode Island, where I'm from, in Boston, which is close by. The summers can be hot sometimes, but I don't know. I would just assume like the non-funny, probably more realistic answer is again, I would assume like when I think of like kind of European films, I feel like they're a little more like casual with that kind of stuff. And
they absolutely are. It was just a whole lot of penis in my face. for no reason, and I have no reason for why it's there. And again, it's also true for female nudity, and obviously, I guess in a way it doesn't bother me as much, but it does. Like I like.
Well, I think with with our generation, like when we were growing up, it was very, very random that you would see that, and I feel like you kind of see it a little more nowadays. Like I feel like a lot of comedies, do it, and usually it's kind of like a a jokier thing. But I feel like maybe it's something that is becoming a little more commonplace. But I do think just from us growing up and not really seeing it as much in most movies, it is kind of like not like you repel from it like if you see it, but it's like it is kind of like, oh, I didn't expect that. It's like a little shocking.
Yeah, I usually don't expect that, whereas I do expect boobs, and you can read into that all you want. That's just, I guess, the way we're trained growing up with our current media. But so yeah, lots of nudity, lots of women dying topless, and so on. There's a kill in a waterbed where like the blood mixes with the water, and like there's just it's just this pool of blood like splashing everywhere, and glorious things like that. Okay, I guess actually just after that window scene where he's looking out the window and he decides to go for a stroll. Because despite having a girlfriend, he clearly is really into the tennis player / detective. I can't say that with a straight face. Tennis player / detective. So yeah, right after this window scene, he goes outside to try and I don't know. I don't even know what he goes out for. I think he sees the tennis player woman, but he goes outside, and she's like walking outside herself, and around the corner comes.
Oh my god!
Comes. An Asian guy in a tracksuit doing kung fu for no reason. He does the motions, he makes the noises, and our detective / tennis player basically puts him down by punching him in the balls.
Yeah.
and then Kendall shows up on his bike. After he's been looking out the window, and he comes up and asks what happened, and then the Chinese guy gets up, and is just jokingly, he's like. And the guy's like, oh, this is our kung fu instructor. Hey. And he's like, so what happened to you? And he's like, oh, I was just walking around and then suddenly I was on the floor. Must have been something I ate. Bad chop suey. And just walks off.
What the hell is this? This is like I really hate when people use the term like so random. Like people are like, oh, so random. Like, but
this was so random.
This is like one of the rare cases where I feel like it applies, where it's like, what the hell is this doing in the movie?
It's not like just to put this in perspective. This character, this Chinese character, the kung fu instructor, is not seen in any other scenes in the entire movie. We don't see him before this. We don't see him after this. He's never a suspect or a victim. He never pops up again, before or after. Oh my. And it's also that really racist, because he's dubbed as well, and I'm almost convinced it's a white guy doing like a really bad Chinese accent.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, because that's what it sounds like. It's really over the top and stereotypical, and let's be honest, racist.
It's super racist. It's I'm sure like they probably weren't as concerned about that stuff in like 1982, but I feel like you can never get away from that nowadays. Look, and it's
bad enough, but it's like his one line is, "Oh, it must have been something I ate. Bad chop suey," and then walks off smiling.
I don't know. Does he like did the bad chop suey make him do these kung fu moves that he didn't realize, and then was he embarrassed by?
I didn't even take it as that. I took it as him cracking a joke. But but at the same time, I'm like, well, why was he doing kung fu moves to her? This random woman who was around the corner. Yeah. Like, I was almost like, oh, maybe he will turn out to be the killer since he seems unhinged. He's just jumping out from corners and attacking people.
And I guess just for quick clarification, I don't think anyone would think this, but just in case, like, we're not laughing because of like the racism or whatever. It's just because of the absurdity and randomness of it.
Oh yeah. I'm laughing at the
just the crazy weirdness.
I'm laughing at the audacity of the moment.
Yeah.
Like it's oh god, it's just
And then,
Everything about it. He's doing kung fu. He mentions Chinese food in his one
yeah.
line of dialogue, and then not everything he does makes no sense. The whole
Yeah.
thing is just
Now, like originally, when I first saw this movie was a couple of years ago. A good friend of mine, James Krillman, I'll give a quick shout out to him. But he, this is one of those movies where he was like, "Oh, like have you ever seen this?" And I was like, "No," and he's like, "Oh, we gotta see it then. Like, Friday night. Like, I'm coming over, get some pizza, have some beers and stuff." And which I think this is a super super fun movie to watch with people, and it's one of those ones that like one person watches it and then then you kind of want to pass it along, be like, oh, you got to see it. And yeah, just when we were watching it, when that scene came on, like I might have even had to pause the movie because like I feel like I was like must have been laughing for like 5 minutes.
yeah. It's definitely one of those scenes, and yeah. So the movie continues. Of course, more kills happen. Kendall does his research with the detectives, even though he's a civilian. But there you go. And they figure out that the Dean is the grown up Timmy from the opening scene, and he tries to. He gets the undercover, tennis player cop over to his house and drugs her because he needs feet. He's got one last part that he needs to get. He needs feet,
Yeah.
and he tries to drug her, but they show up in time and they take care of him, and they find his Frankenstein's creation behind a bookcase because he's got like one of these things where the detective leans in the bookcase and it like spins around like a old movie, and the body drops out. But of course, the thing we really want to talk about is the final moment of the film.
Yeah.
So everything seems that they've caught the killer, everything's done, everything's fine, and just as they're leaving, Kendall goes over to the corpse, the Frankenstein's creation, and it comes to life, and it grabs his crotch so tight there's blood, and then it pops. There's like a pop of blood, implying that his penis has just popped and is now just a bloody mush.
It's it's great.
And
it's like
we close out on the screaming sounds of Kendall as his poor penis, which we've seen firsthand. Which is maybe this was the justification. Maybe this legitimately was the reason that they did this full frontal nudity scene. It was like, oh, we know that penis, we feel bad for it now because now it's dead. Oh god. And it's really, it makes you cringe. It's one of those things where it's not that bad until you hear the pop. It's the pop that's like, oh no, stay away from my penis.
Yeah. It's like the craziest ending to like a crazy movie. It's like, just the showing the corpse alone was like like it fit the movie, but it was kind of like, oh, it was kind of shocking, and then it like falls on top of him, and there's like a really long scream sequence when it falls on him. But like that alone would have been like a satisfying ending. But just to add that little extra, like, no, we know this doesn't make any sense, but we're just gonna throw this in.
Oh I am not pissed at all that they threw this in at the end. Not at all. This was a great way to end this movie. And
it's like the cherry on the crazy sundae.
You could argue, because obviously the whole thing was he was getting the feet to fit his mother's shoes, so the whole thing was like he was rebuilding his mother, kind of thing. And you could argue maybe they were trying to say something like, because it was meant to be his mother, like reincarnated, that she was against sex and like dicks, and that's why she went for the penis. I don't know. That's where I'm going with it. But that's Pieces. We'll save ratings till the end. We'll do them both at the end. But that's Pieces.
Well, before we leave, real quick, we don't need to talk about it too much. But I do also just want to give a shout out to the janitor or groundskeeper or whatever. Oh, yeah. I liked him a lot. Just his like facial expressions were like so great. Just they cracked me up.
Yeah. I also like the music, and actually I'll mention that quickly as well.
Oh, yeah.
I thought the score was quite good. Had that pulsing kind of thing going for it. So let's move on to the dorm that dripped blood, aka Death Dorm, aka Pranks.
Which that's got to be the worst title out of all of them.
Well, there's like one prank in the whole movie.
And if he was like a serial killer and all his kills were based on pranks, that would be fine. but that's not the case.
It is not. So it's funny actually. I didn't when we picked these, we didn't actually go out of our way to make sure they came from the same year, or indeed that they were both revolving around a college. But funny enough, it just kind of worked out that way. I guess college isn't exactly a unusual setting for a slasher movie. So the Dorm of Drip Blood, it's about a dorm room or a dormitory that's shutting down. They're getting rid of it, and it's about the sort of the woman who runs the place, and she's staying over like this last weekend to like sort everything out, and like they've got all these stuff that they're going to like fix up and then sell on, like all the desks and tables and whatever other stuff they've got on there. And she's got like a small team of students that have like volunteered to help with this. So there's like 5 or 6 of them over the weekend doing this. So they're on their own. There's like one crazy neighbour guy who keeps popping up, and there's a janitor who's still around. But it's a pretty good setting. It's a good setup because it's the typical limited cast, one location, kills start happening, and this is a really lower key movie, I'll say. Did you like this one, Timmy?
No, I did not.
You did not like this one.
I was waiting for it. I really did not like it. I thought it was kind of boring. I agree. It's like the setting is fine. I do like kind of the closed settings, and then it's kind of cool, like a college campus, but like, ooh, when it's, like kind of like closing and stuff like that could lead to some cool things. But I didn't really find any of the characters that interesting. I didn't think the kills were good. I felt like it cut away at a lot of, just when I was hoping to see stuff.
Well, don't rush through everything. You're rushing through a lot of points.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's take it a talking point at a time there. Okay. So, characters, I agree. Characters aren't that interesting in this. They're kind of just typical, there to be, fodder, there to be killed.
There's no undercover tennis pro cop.
There is not, no. There is a weird frizzy-haired guy, and there is this random character who's buying some tables who, for some reason, is really rapey. And is a character that we come back to for some reason. But yeah, characters aren't all that great, and the acting is not particularly good either. There's a police officer that comes to see them, like maybe a halfway, 2/3 in, to investigate things, and he felt like he was just a guy who put on a costume and had no idea how to act like a police officer. It was pretty dire. This is definitely one of those more lost movies. That said, I didn't dislike it as much as you did. I think
I had a feeling that you'd be. I think it's a little more up your alley. So I had a feeling that if you didn't outright like it, you'd at least like it more than me.
Yeah, I think. Well, I just like bad slasher movies. I think as long as it's, now, don't get me wrong. I do think it does drag a bit in the last half hour. Like I feel like, see, when we find out who the killer is, there's actually quite a lot of movie left after that. Like there's a good 25 minutes of time after we find out who the killer is, and it goes on for a while, and some of that did drag. But there's some things I do like. Now, the kills, right? Obviously, it's a slasher movie. The kills are a big thing.
Yeah.
I loved the kills, but not because they were good. I loved them for how awful they were. Okay. Right? Because all of them were so obviously fake that it was really cracking me up. Like, the janitor gets like a drill in the back of his head, but it was so obviously like a prosthetic head, because every time it cut to the shot of the drill going in, it was perfectly still, but every other shot the guy's head was like tilting to the side. Later on, when the main girl machetes the frizzy haired guy, it just looks like she hits him with it, but just all this blood starts pumping out, and it's like, that didn't come. It just didn't look very good. And then early on, when the parents come to get the girl who's going home, and the dad gets hit in the head repeatedly with a baseball bat, it just feels like they linger on it for a long time with the bat hitting his face repeatedly, but the sound effect and everything about it just made it feel like it was really fake.
Yeah, it didn't feel like there was a lot of weight to it.
Yeah.
Like it felt very light, like just like the way I would take a plastic bat as a kid and kind of bop something lightly.
Oh, that's it. I do actually legitimately like his daughter getting killed with the car.
Oh, the running her head.
Yeah, it's like they'd be
Over
looking
that
over
one,
her head,
yeah.
because I like how it just sort of like cuts to her feet and you hear like you see the splat of blood. Like I thought
Yeah.
that was effective for what it was. Uh, so this is definitely a not great slasher movie that came in the boom of all the cheap slasher movies of the early 80s, and it's definitely not as inventive as other ones, and it's definitely not as good for. I mean, you could also argue Pieces isn't really a good movie. You know, you could argue that, as cheesy, there's acting's all
Yeah.
over the place and the dialogue's terrible. It has more charm though, and the kills are better, and it's definitely more interesting. It has better music. The music here, in fact, see the main bit of music they kept playing, the horror theme that played when stuff was happening. It sounded almost exactly like the music from the end of Friday the 13th when Jason comes out of the water.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to go back and listen to that. I didn't pick
Oh,
up on it.
yeah, it was like every time like something was going down, it was like I can't do it, but it was just the strings were going nuts. It was, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what sort of thing I'm talking about. I'm not going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
I'm not going to hurt everyone's ears by trying to hum it. Um, so yeah, like I almost have very little positive to say about the movie, but I kind of liked it anyway.
Well, I do have one positive thing to say, but we might want to wait. But I'll just say right now that I did actually kind of like the ending.
I
But
liked the
I mean,
ending too.
we'll
We'll
get
get
there.
we'll get to the ending. I do
Yeah.
want to say this though. All the kills seem kind of related, except the one at the start. There's a kill right at the start of the movie, that before the title sequence, that just
Oh,
is
yeah.
it's just a random person getting killed. That, as far as I can tell, has nothing to do with any other characters in the movie. So there's that. So good for that. Also, it's kind of weird that there's a lot of weird decisions made in the movie. Like the main girl, Joanne, like her boyfriend, who's named Tim, and I was actually cracking up a couple of times because she kept saying things like, "Oh, thanks for the confidence, Tim," and it kept making me think of you, and it was really cracking me up.
It's
But
another similarity to Pieces as well.
yeah, no, Timmy, yeah, and he leaves. He leaves to go on a trip, right? And he doesn't come back. Like I was expecting him to show up like towards the end, and save
Yeah.
her, or turn out to be the killer. Maybe like he never actually left, or something like that, and he just never comes back. And there's also some weird pacing issues with some scenes. Like there's a scene where literally where the girl who got run over with the car, Debbie, like we cut to her in the basement like doing something, and the camera's tracking in as if we're getting like a suspenseful scene. But then something drops and there's a loud noise, and that's the end of the scene, and it just cuts away. Like it's over in like 5-10 seconds. It's just some weird little decisions like that. But no. But for everything I'm saying, like I don't know, I enjoyed it as a bad movie. Admittedly, it'd probably be again better be one to watch with friends, where you can like sit back and like make fun of it, and
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling because I actually kind of had to watch this kind of twice because I watched it one night a little later and then I ended up falling asleep I think about halfway through. So then I kind of picked it back up the next day, and I do feel like maybe under the right settings, watching it all the way through, and again, if it is that more kind of fun atmosphere, if you're watching with a couple of friends and making fun of it, I can see where there'd be enjoyment in that.
yeah. So yeah, you want to talk about the ending, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's worth doing. So we find out that the killer is the guy who does play one prank. He puts a spider on an egg at one point, and hence the alternate title of Pranks. But he turns out to be the killer, right? And he has very little motivation. He says that he's in love with the main girl, who I've kind of seen's had a thing for another guy, and she also has the boyfriend, right? But we never really get a sense that he was into her the whole movie. But whatever, fine, right? So the motivation is almost worthless. I love how hammy he is when he comes out as the killer. He just constantly talks like he's a complete crazy person.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. But what I do like about the ending is that he completely gets away with it.
Oh yeah.
He wins. Like the police show up and they think that the pervy guy who was buying the tables, they think he was the killer. They shoot him, and they go to check other stuff the rest of the building because he says his friends are throughout the building, and he takes the main girl who's still alive, just unconscious, and throws her in a furnace.
Yeah.
And the last scene of the movie is the cops just over the radio saying, "Yeah, we got him. Yeah, lot of murders, but yeah, we've done it. It's fine." And that it cuts the credits. We're done. Well, we see a bit of smoke from the furnace to like let us know that she's getting burned alive.
Yeah.
But it's like he won. It cuts the credits. Like
I thought that was interesting. I thought the standoff with the police was really interesting. Like I'd never really seen this before, but the killer actually forces the good guy that's like standing over him to basically get killed by the police, because he has like the police are telling him to turn around and the killer is on the ground and he has a knife and he's the guy can't turn around because if he turns around then he's gonna stab him. So
yeah, because he even says you're a dead man. He's taunting him to do it.
So he basically like forces that guy to kind of make a move to him, so the police like will shoot him or whatever. And I thought that was pretty interesting. That's not something I mean, if they have done it in other movies, I've never seen it, and I thought like, oh, that's kind of a cool, like, you think you're safe, the cops are here, and that's an interesting way for him to still get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're outside the moment, I can look at that and think rationally and go, oh, there's this way around it. There's this thing I could have done.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, it works well enough in the moment that you go with it. There's some cool, when the killer does appear and the main girl Joanne tries to run away. There's some cool stuff where they're chasing in the maintenance tunnels of this. By the way, this dormitory is huge.
Yeah.
And it has like these huge areas of maintenance places where I'm like, I was under the impression dormitories, were basically just, like houses, big houses with lots of rooms.
The college I went to is kind of like well, there are like a couple of different dorms, but there were some that were kind of like bigger buildings, and then like almost maybe more of like an apartment style where like
but
it didn't look like this.
Yeah, when they were like crawling through tunnels and all that at the end and underneath the place, and there's all these like this giant kitchen, which is the kitchen's fair enough, but there's all these other giant areas around the kitchen. I was like, this feels like the hotel from The Shining. That's how big this place is, and it's not really that big. Every time we see it outside, it's like X size, but every time we're inside, it's like, oh no, this is like the goddamn Shining. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot more to add on a Dormant Drip. It's a pretty straightforward and simple movie.
Yeah, that's it's about what I got for it too.
Okay, so I guess we should do some ratings for both of these movies. So there you go. How many pieces out of 10 would you give pieces?
So this was kind of a weird one because I think the I move that. That's pretty bright. Let's see if that's a little better. All right. So yeah, because I think like the kind of main appeal for like pieces is that it's like you kind of think of it as like being like a cheesy, kind of like a fun slasher, but kind of like cheesy, weird, crazy, dub, random stuff. But I think there's also some core stuff that's really good in it too. Like the kills, I think all looked pretty cool, and I actually like the killer. Like I think he had a good gimmick. Like the idea of a person killing people to make a human body because he's obsessed with jigsaw puzzles is actually like a cool idea. If you kind of divorce it from like the weird cheesiness and craziness that's going on in the movie, like I think, oh, that's actually a solid, interesting idea. So I feel like it works on that level, but then it also works on like that crazy, weird, random level. So I was kind of thinking like maybe around the 7-ish area, but I had so much fun watching it the last time. I'm gonna give it a higher score. I'm gonna give it an 8.
All right, and Dorm the Drip Blood.
Yeah, again, this one. See this, like you said earlier before, like you're more of a slasher guy. I like slashers too, but like a certain type of slashers, like they either have to be like really crazy bad and cheesy, or they have to be like cool or have like a cool gimmick. And I just feel like there wasn't enough of this going on. Like there was like the cheesiness that you said, but like not to the degree that it really did it for me. And again, like the killer I just thought was kind of boring and stuff. And uh, it like I said, the first time I watched it, I fell asleep, which is never a great sign. So I'm actually gonna give this one a pretty low score, but there was still a few things I like, so I'll give it a 4.
Okay. PCs, I will give a 7 out of 10, and Dorm That Drip Blood, I will give a 5.5 out of 10.
Fair scores.
No, PCs was a blast. I had a lot of fun with PCs. It's relentlessly entertaining.
Yeah, I'm really glad you liked it, because that's actually one I wanted you to watch for a while. Like some stuff, it's kind of like, we should do this on the episode, but I don't know how you feel about it. But this was like, again, it's one of those ones that you want to share with friends. You want to be like, you got to watch this. It's so crazy. And I had a feeling that you would like it, and so I'm glad that you got enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, whereas Dorm That Drip Blood, of course, is, not as good, but I see some, I get some enjoyment out of it. So
I wasn't like angry that I watched it, but yeah, it didn't do it for me as much.
But yeah, that brings an end to this double feature of slasher movies in the month of October. So let us know.
I think I'm gonna start calling them slashies.
No, I don't.
I like it. No, Ever since that episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead, I've been calling them slashies.
No, slashers. They're slashers, Timmy.
Or slashies to some.
No. Just no. Let us know what you thought of these movies in the comments below. If you have seen them, like and subscribe and all that stuff. It helps us out a lot. Of course, you can check us out doing other reviews. So check out all the stuff on the channel. Over on our sister channel, Mild Fuzz TV, me and Timmy review old episodes of Tales from the Crypt on a weekly basis. We're working through. We just finished the first season. Season 2 will be starting next week. So they go up every Sunday. So check those out if you want to. There'll be a link in the corner. And also check out our friends over at Rowan's Reviews. They do a lot of written reviews, and they do cover a lot of horror movies typically, as well as albums and concerts and stuff. And there'll be a link to them in the description. But no, other than that, guys, we are just ever so grateful for spending the time with us. Check out other horror movies and stuff. Keep watching them. Keep getting scared. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.